Chào mừng quý vị và các bạn đến với chương trình Đồng tiền thông minh trên kênh FBNC. Thưa quý vị, vào những ngày đầu năm của năm 2014 vừa qua, thì cộng đồng khởi nghiệp tại Việt Nam đã vinh dự được chào đón một diễn giả, một doanh nhân đến từ thung lũng Silicon của Hoa Kỳ, là một trung tâm sáng tạo bậc nhất của thế giới. Đó là Joe Lonsdale, là đồng sáng lập của Palatir Technologies, một doanh nghiệp phần mềm chuyên cung cấp các giải pháp bảo mật cho chính phủ và doanh nghiệp Mỹ. Anh đồng thời cũng là đồng sáng lập của quỹ đầu tư mạo hiểm Formation 8. Và anh đã có buổi chia sẻ cùng với cộng đồng khởi nghiệp với chủ đề là doanh nghiệp thông minh, kinh nghiệm xây dựng doanh nghiệp tỷ đô. Chương trình do Five Design, là một công ty tư vấn và tạo các doanh nghiệp khởi nghiệp tổ chức, và FBNC đã có cơ hội thu hình lại chương trình, và sau đây mời quý vị cùng đến với phần chia sẻ của Joe Lonsdale.
So talk about Palantir. Palantir is a software company and you're serving US governments and enterprises. So tell me about the early days. How did you get started with the idea?
Sure. So Palantir was inspired by some of the problems we were facing at a company called PayPal. PayPal is a big payments company that some of my friends built and that I worked at. And the big challenge at PayPal was that the Chinese and Russian mafia were stealing all of our money. So we were trying to figure out how to stop them. And we had about 8 competitors, 8 other companies at the time. And all these other companies went bankrupt because they couldn't figure out how to stop the bad guys from taking their money. And that was the unique thing we did at PayPal, is we built investigative systems, and we hired people to be investigators using new technology to figure out how to stop them. And we cut down the fraud by 90%. And that made the company profitable. And then we sold it to a company called eBay. eBay is a big auction company. I don't know if they're very active here. And so around that time, this was just before the 9/11 event in America. And so we had been doing a lot of work. You know, when we found the bad guys, we'd pass it to the FBI or the Secret Service, the law enforcement in America, and we started teaching them how to use data. And then they confronted this really big problem with 9/11, with the attacks on America. And we realized that their systems were not very good. And so we realized we needed to build a company to help them build better systems.
Okay, so Palantir, you joined the team at a very young age. At that time, you fresh out of college, Stanford, right?
Yeah, I'd been working. So after we sold PayPal to eBay, Peter Thiel started a family office. He started an investment group. And Peter was the first investor in Facebook at that time. So I got to do diligence on the deal and meet the founders of Facebook. And I learned a little bit from them as well as from PayPal, and helped Peter with a lot of investing. And while we were doing that, we talked about putting this company together. And so about a year out of school, with my roommate and Peter, we started Palantir.
But tell me more about because when you fresh out of college, and most of the time people start a business, they usually think about consumer applications. And you guys think about application for the governments and enterprises.
Definitely. Should I talk a little bit about the different differences there? This is actually, we didn't do this on purpose at the time, but Palantir...
What was your vision at that time?
Well, the vision at that time was that one of the most important things to get right in the global intelligence and global defense space was to make sure we empowered them to use data well, but also secured how they were using the data. Because it's very dangerous when you give a government the power to use all of your data, which is very scary to us in the West. So in the West, a lot of us are what you call civil libertarians. So we like the government to be well run, but we don't always like it to know everything about us, because sometimes you get bad guys in the government, and that's very scary. And so the question was, how can we help the government stop the bad guys while also putting systems in place to make sure nobody within the government was doing anything inappropriate? So you have to have systems that watch the watchers. And so that was the idea of Palantir, is originally to use all that data really well while doing it in a way that worked for civil liberties.
But how do you build a team with talented people when every one of them could start their own company?
Well, so everyone could start their own company. It's actually a really good question. This is a central challenge in Silicon Valley, central challenge in a lot of other startups. One of our top startup places I work is Israel, and everyone wants to start their own company there too. But the best companies are when you have a set of people early on who have a really important mission, and they're able to inspire others to join them. And so instead of starting their own company, everyone gets together. So that's, at Palantir, the first 20 people, I think they each could have started their own companies. But the fact that we all got them to work together, that's why the company was successful, is attracting those kind of people.
Well, I mean, that's the same answer that we heard many times. You try to share the dream with them and try to, exactly. Persuade and convince them. But how specifically?
I think you have to inspire them that what you're working on is the most important thing, and that is going to be much, much bigger than anyone understands. And I think we are lucky that the types of problems we were working on in the government were very inspiring and also had very clear applications to other big industries as well. And so people saw, wow, if we do this right, this could be one of the biggest companies in the world. And so so they're solving a problem they really care about. You know, America had just been attacked, and this is a really important thing to fix. It's a really fun, really hard problem. And it's a little bit like chicken and egg. Once you get the first 5 or 10 people say, wow, those are 10 amazing people, I want to work with them. And it kind of spirals from there, you know?
Anybody leave?
No, actually, we were pretty lucky. You know, it's been about 10 years now. And so, of course, at this point, you know, it's 1,500 people, and so people go and leave. But the first 20, 30 people were all there the first several years. And so that we were very lucky to have that.
So Palantir right now is evaluated at about $9 billion after 9 years of operations. What do you think are the biggest factors that contribute to that success?
So there's a lot of things. The strength of the team is the most important. There's a lot of lessons from the consumer wave of companies in terms of what you want to have for a company. You want to have very strong network effects and very strong platform effects. So to talk about those two, basically a network effect means that if there's a certain group of people using it, the next person's more likely to use it. So in consumer, this is very obvious. Facebook has a very strong network effect, right? Because once you get everyone on it, they're kind of stuck, and the next person has to come on to be part of that community. Same with eBay, which is an auction site. Same with LinkedIn. The question is, how do you do that with enterprise companies? And there's actually a lot of different ways of doing that. In the intelligence case, the US and certain allied countries started using it together to share very secured information in very specific ways. And once a few of them were doing that, then the fourth one wants to do it, and the fifth one wants to do it. So now there's over 20 countries doing that. In the enterprise case, we help with a lot of other similar security-related things. And so if let's say there's 2 big banks that are on Palantir, and they're sharing data about cyber attacks to protect themselves from cyber attacks, the third bank wants to come on, and the first 2 are happy because now that bank can share more information, and that bank wants to be part of it as well. So you get these networks where more and more people come on, and you get that's what's called a network effect, and that's really important to have because once you get that, you lock it down. The platform effect just means people are building on top of it. So there's over 1,000 companies now that build on top of Palantir's platform to access its customers. And so Facebook's another good example of that too. If everyone builds on the Facebook platform. So those are 2 things you want to think about. How do I achieve those effects in order to, in order to kind of make your company a central part of the ecosystem?
Okay, so platform effect and network effect. So tell us more about the experience when you first raised some first investment for Palantir. How did it go with the investor at that time?
So we were very lucky early on that Peter Thiel was a co-founder, and he was already pretty famous. We basically convinced him to kind of buy into the mission and be part of it. I think for an enterprise company that's working on going after a big industry, you need older people on your team. I think for something like us, like you probably, I don't know if you know Snapchat, the new consumer company, or any of these other things like Facebook. These are very hard companies to build, but it's possible to build them with a very young team because you don't need to interact that much with the real world. You just need to get something to be viral and take off and grow. If you're building something with a big industry, it's usually a lot more expensive. So there's something called lean startup model. People say, oh, startups are much cheaper to start. I don't think that's necessarily true of something working in a big industry. In a big industry, you're probably going to have to go through, in the US, you have to go through about $20 million. Probably in Vietnam, not that much, but it's a lot of money to go through before you get to success. It takes a few years, it takes a lot of relationships. And so having Peter there early on and having some more senior people around early on was very important in order to get those resources and to attract the right allies.
So looking back at the time with Palantir or Adipars, what are some of the moments that you thought you could have done differently, or some of the mistakes that you made?
Sure. So I think with Palantir, we tried to build everything all at once. So the idea with Palantir is that in the US and a lot of these countries, there's these very large what are called IT services contracts. So there'll be a new department, like the Bush administration created the Department of Homeland Security, and there was there's a $3 billion contract to integrate all of their data. And they gave this contract to Unisys, some random company. And so we looked at about 100 different contracts like this, and what we said was, how can we build a product that out of the box would prevent the need for all these separate contracts? We just do it all at once. And so I think we were a little bit young and really ambitious, and we wanted to do it all at once and build something to replace everything, and that took a very long time. And because it was such a big thing, the company almost died before it got there. I think with my newer companies, we try to have a lot more intermediate milestones where the product's more useful along the way, as opposed to just going for the big thing right away, because sometimes it's too hard to do all at once.
Sure.
Đến đây thì phần 1 của chương trình sẽ được tạm dừng. Quý vị có thể xem lại đoạn phỏng vấn này trên đồng tiền thông minh fbnc.com hoặc là facebook.com/đồng tiền thông minh. Chúng tôi sẽ còn quay trở lại với phần tiếp theo.